Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm so excited. This morning we're trying out a new setup with our across the earth mega worldwide audio video setup. We're live streaming at infotainmentwars.com and of course at fwank.com, FWANQ.com. Our own answer to Fwank speech and of course Troth SoCal that Trump's ne'er-do-well social media network. Welcome everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for joining us. Super excited. You guys will let me know like levels and all that kind of stuff because I was so busy just making sure stuff worked that I'm just happy it's on, and we'll just and hopefully it will stay that way. It's hard to pick out the biggest news of the week, but clearly the Manchin deal, especially from a guy named Manchin who lives on a houseboat, was an extraordinary turn of events. Apparently, this is my theory, and I'm sticking with it. Johnny Million, you've obviously been following and are aware of what happened and what wasn't happening. Since Build Back Better and the infrastructure bill, like the social aspects of that were separated last year to get them through. And then a new negotiation was started to try and get the other one through. And then the $1.2 trillion mark was too much for, Manchin and them. So they were going to pause on it. And then the Ukraine war happened and kind of threw a monkey wrench into everything. And then everybody was just kind of writing it off. And somewhere around May, it was like, you know what? From, apparently Democratic pollsters were hearing Democrats and progressives all across the country saying, you know what, it's not happening fast enough for me, so I'm just going to give the country back to Republicans since they're doing such a fantastic job taking care of the least among us. And then a few lightning bolts happened that kind of reminded some of those folks of the seriousness of the circumstance that we find ourselves in, not the least of which was Roe v. Wade. The early draft of that travesty was released.
Those darned incremental changes.
Oh, yes. The ones that, by the way, Republicans used to get themselves to this point, by the way. They didn't seem to have a problem or gripe about that at all. They were like, yep, that's how we're going to do it. Incremental. We're going to boil that frog. And that's exactly what they did. And when that draft version came out, the White House started working on their response, but they had to ultimately, because it was a legal aspect, they had to wait for the final decision, because if you draft your legal response to something that, materially is different, even by one sentence in terms of what you're trying to handle, you might have to start from scratch entirely or set yourself down the wrong road, which I think, by the way, we all learned from the Pact Act this week. Republicans, a bipartisan group of Democrats and Republicans passed the Pact Act to create a fund for medical care for burn pit victims and toxic victims of toxic war zones within our military and 9/11 first responders. And the Republicans were for it before they were against it. And the reason it was even back up for another vote to be scuttled by the Republicans was because of one sentence that would make it technically unconstitutional, and that change of that one sentence, which they just had to fix and then re-vote on it, everything's fine, no harm, no foul, on they go, apparently was too much for Republicans who had, they were so embarrassed by how they got rolled by Schumer and Manchin this week that they were going to take it out on veterans. And one of the most...
Yeah, that was awesome. The fist bumps, everything about it.
Yeah, it's classy across the board. Especially, again, from the party that brings you Blue Lives Matter and Back the Blue, who also back people who beat cops nearly to death with flagpoles that were sharpened that had
Like you do.
Blue Lives Matter flags on them, and tased a cop till he had a heart attack. Those folks, they weren't, it wasn't sufficient that they would go after cops, in that ironic and, I dare I say, sarcastic way. The military had to come next. So the yellow ribbons and support the troops and all that kind of stuff, throw that out. That's ridiculous. Don't, no. Once you've served, you've outlived your usefulness to the Republicans. And apparently you are a bargaining chip. And by the way, in this case, they're not even bargaining to get anything. It was just because they were,
stop.
yeah, it was just because they were aggravated. Just grotesque. And this is the fascinating thing, I think, was just that Mitch McConnell was able to whip that group together to vote against it, lockstep, to punish Democrats, because apparently they had been tricked into voting for the CHIPS Act, which benefits the entire country, including their constituents. In a lot of cases, more their constituents than other people. But that was, they weren't going to vote on it because it was...
Yeah, they're the ones with the constituents who are on benefits.
Right. Well, even the CHIPS Act itself is not S-chip. The CHIPS Act is the computer chips, reshoring of factories in the United States CHIPS Act that they voted for. And then less than an hour later, Schumer and Manchin announced their deal. And whoo, buddy, that was the reason. That was 100% the reason why the Republicans flipped out, didn't vote for the Pact Act, and are saying this is political warfare. Because apparently the Democrats pull this once. They pull a Merrick Garland on one bill, which, and I got news for you, that even the Manchin deal that's going to pass, and Kristen Sinema is going to come on board. She's going to get she got a lot from the CHIPS Act anyways, so that was where the negotiation came. If she's taking this bill, she's going to take it home and give it her due diligence, and then she'll come back and there'll be a conversation in the afternoon, and then there'll be this amendment palooza that will happen next week as the Republicans try to tear it to pieces, and then there'll be a reconciliation amendment that all the Democrats have to sign off on, that puts the bill back to where it was. And then they vote on it. And that's it. And they need every vote, including, they need all 48 Democrats and both independents to sign off on this. And then to clear that hurdle, they have to have the VP come in and do this through reconciliation. You know why? Because we have total control of the entire government. We have less than a coin flip in the Senate. We can only lose 4 votes in the House and have this bill still pass. And of course, the president's ready to sign it yesterday. Matter of fact, he already signed the CHIPS Act. That's already rolling. That's why the Republicans, again, got so angry. And I'm enjoying it, I have to say. That was a...
Patty Ann and Hal Vickery coming in hot with super chats.
Oh, right on. Oh my gosh, Hal Victory, thank you so much. And Lisa Mia Moore as well. Thank you so much. Oh my God.
And Patty Ann, what is SEK as far as a...
Oh, that's Swedish
currency?
Kronar. Yeah.
That sounds delicious.
It does, doesn't it? It's like...
Does that have lingonberries?
It's great in the morning. Yeah, everything has loganberries in it.
Loganberries?
Yeah, what'd you say?
Lingonberries?
Oh, that's right. The lingonberry pancakes, right, from Big Lebowski. Yes, they all had the lingonberry pancakes. And they pan down and see she's missing a toe. And so I have some really fun news on top of the fact that Schumer and Manchin both rolled the Republicans this week. Now, I have news for you. Even without the Manchin deal, the fact that they got the CHIPS Act passed before they did anything else that would have, the Republicans would have seen as a betrayal you know.
Right.
But they managed to get that through. The CHIPS Act passing itself is extraordinary. And the Republicans are mad they weren't able to stop it, even though they're for it. Again, what is wrong with voting for things that will help your constituents? What is the win in going, I'll show you, I'll starve my own people mentality? These kind of the North Korea
via spite.
of the red states. I don't get it. Other than it's a power struggle by the very quote unquote elites that run the government that are in DC that they always decry. Isn't that the thing that they're always complaining about? Is that DC is disassociated from rural and flyover country, and that those folks have real needs that are ignored by the elitists at the top, and which is exactly what the Republicans are doing, both with the CHIPS Act, both with this funding for, even this Manchin deal is something that should, on any functional level, be a bipartisan bill anyways. Without the lockstep control that Mitch McConnell has over the Republicans, which I honest to God, I don't know why some of them that have their foot out the door don't cross over, because we'd only need 2 of them. Like, we literally, if we got 1 of them, we wouldn't have to worry about whether or not Kristen Sinema cared. If we elected, if we keep our senators and we elect 2 more, Manchin and Sinema no longer have control over the president's agenda on reconciliation packages anyways, because all reconciliation would be cleared to go. That's what this bill is. That's what this part is. This is an aspect of the budget. And if we had 52 votes, meaning 50 Democrats and 2 independents that caucus with us, we could have 2 people, go kind of weak-kneed on stuff and still get it through. Don't get me started on if we had 62, because then the function of our government looks wholly different than it does now, and the rest of us can go back to talking about music and art and what job we want and education and doing stuff instead of having to white knuckle our own government all the time. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Parks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. WCPT820.com is the website. SexyLiberal.com is where you can get the show as a podcast. And there's a new Sexy Liberal show just added in Washington, D.C. on the 10th of September. Very exciting. So exciting. It'll be nice to be in D.C. During the break, Johnny, I'll tell you, I'm very excited about the trip. We'll be back right after this.